2007, Spain. A woman lies awake in the middle of the night, racked with pain and guilt after the loss of her son. She begins hearing strange noises in the house, creaking floorboards, cold drafts, bumps in the night. Could it be that her missing son has finally returned? Could it be his spirit trying to get in touch with her? Could it all be psychological, or could it be something else?
Simon?
By the 2000s, the old-fashioned haunted house movies had returned in a big way, thanks to international directors such as Guillermo del Toro, who brought with him a nostalgic love for old-fashioned horror movies as a welcome antidote to the glut of remakes and torture porns coming out in mainstream American cinema. Two movies in particular, one del Toro directed and another he produced, became instant classics overnight, bringing love, sadness and compassion to some truly frightening subject matter. Join me as we continue exploring the evolution of the ghost story and we review two melancholic masterpieces, The Devil's Backbone and The Orphanage.
Un, dos, tres, toca la pared.
Welcome back to the Evolution of Horror. My name is Mike, and as ever, I am your host. If you're joining us for the first time, then welcome. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres across a number of weeks. We are currently in the midst of exploring the evolution of the ghost story, and this is part 15, can you believe it, in which we are exploring two of my personal favourite ghost movies, The Devil's Backbone and The Orphanage. But before we get started, here are a few contact details. You can email us. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, that's @evolutionpod, or on Facebook, that's facebook.com/evolutionofhorror. Now, as we near the end of this series, I am soon going to be revealing via social media what subgenre of horror we're going to be covering next in the new series. So if you want to find that out, the best way to do that is to follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up to date. But let's get started. To discuss The Devil's Backbone and The Orphanage in spoilerific detail, I'm very excited. I'm joined by a brand new guest. She not only writes for The Independent, she's also appeared on BBC One's movie show, Film 2018, and she fills in on a regular basis for the good Dr. Mark Kermode on Radio 5 Live's Wittertainment. I am, of course, talking about the wonderful Clarisse Loughrey. Hello, Clarisse.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here and doing this.
I'm so happy to be here. We're next to a poster signed by Liam Neeson,
I know.
So I feel very glamorous now.
What more could you possibly want? Yeah, there's nothing more glam than this little broom cupboard room that we're sat in right now. So first of all, just for people who don't know you, Clarisse, can you tell me a little bit about sort of what you do?
Yes, so I guess I would say I'm a film critic, but I work mainly at The Independent, doing, the standard reviews and features and interviews. But also outside of that, I have a YouTube channel that is very shoddy, but I love it.
It's awesome.
I love it like an abandoned puppy. It's just my little thing. So that's called That Dumb Movie Show. And I just do reviews on there. And also I have been on Wittertainment. So much fun.
That is incredible, really, isn't it? I mean, your blog is successful. The Independent is amazing. But were you freaked out when you suddenly had to fill in Mark Kermode's shoes on a 2-hour show on Radio 5 Live, on pretty much the biggest movie show in the world?
It was genuinely the most terrifying experience of my life. I just, up until the moment the red light turned on to say we were live, I was sitting there being like, I can't do this. Like, I'm just gonna throw up or scream or just run out. But I will say, like, everyone on the team, like Sanjeev, everybody was just so, like, I would not have been able to do it if it weren't for them. And just the fact that they were so supportive and so faithful, and they were just like, you're gonna do great. This is great. We're so excited for you. And I think that was so nice to have, because I don't know, I guess, as a film critic, it's really weird sometimes, because you do have that imposter syndrome constantly, because it's always about kind of like asserting your opinions of being like, this is what this film
wrong?
Exactly.
And obviously, by its very nature, there's always going to be some people that will disagree with you and will say you're wrong. Whatever.
Yeah, and it's trying to find the difference between like, well, there's a difference between, well, we have different opinions, but
Mm-hmm.
then there's also the difference between maybe this opinion is stupid and I've just said something stupid. And so
Yes.
it's a weird career to do. And I think every time you come across people who are like that, who just have full faith in you, it's just like a really nice feeling.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And also, that show is has got a hardcore fan base as well. Let's be honest, it's got
Yes.
a hardcore following. That must have really added to it. But everyone, from what I've seen online, everyone loved you. But that must have been a scary thing as well.
Because I think especially like having done YouTube, and even on my small scale of it, you still have
You still get the
people
comments.
that
Yeah,
just you're like, what is your problem?
Yeah.
And so I had kind of gone into that show with that mentality of
Mm-hmm.
knowing when there's kind of like a hardcore base of people, you're going to
Yeah.
get those kinds of bizarre, like really cruel comments. And I don't think I didn't see anything
no,
that I
there
was
nothing.
like.
No.
And I just didn't check my Twitter until I was on the train home, and then I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I'll have a little peek, and I was like, oh, this is all nice stuff. Like,
Oh.
and everyone, and all the people who are part of like the Facebook fan pages
Yes.
have come out to just say like, thank you, like, welcome to the family. It's been like really sweet.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
That's so nice because that must have been so terrifying. And also just time-wise, I mean, we were just saying this before we started, but like, I work in television, and these kind of movie shows that I work on is like, right, you've got 3 minutes max to cover every point you want to cover, kind of thing. Whereas 2 hours is a long time to fill, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm so used to always having to condense my opinions
Yes.
for different things.
Yeah.
And to suddenly, like, I had a couple, and hopefully this was not noticeable, but I had a couple of moments that I was like, oh, I've like said all the stuff I planned to say. And then you're like, oh, there's still like 3 minutes.
Oh god! But then
So-
also the good thing is, I mean, that's also partly Sanjeev or whoever's presenting's job, then, isn't it, to kind
Yeah.
of go. Luckily, we've got 8,000 emails to read, or
That was the
whatever
great
else.
thing, because I
Yeah.
think he could tell immediately when like the panic used to start like coming across my face. He'd be like, right, well, we have an email.
Let's do this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing, fantastic. So, obviously, this is a horror movie podcast. What's your opinion on the horror genre? Are you a fan?
My attitude towards films is that I don't have particular genre. I kind
Sure.
of like bits and pieces from every single genre,
Yeah.
and so I've loved horror. I guess my taste really swerves more towards paranormal ghost
Yes.
stories, and I think especially like the stuff we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Like I have a very like gothic sensibility towards things, and
Awesome.
so anything with a little bit of that goth, which I think is a very different way to approach horror, and I feel like I really see it in those kinds of horror movies as opposed to the slasher movie or the stalker or the torture-y movie.
Yeah.
I'm very bad at the subgenres here, but I think
No,
I see the gothic ghost story as very much its own thing, and I think that's what I've always just been really, really attracted to.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's one of those things where we talked about this before, where when it comes to the kind of ghosts, the supernatural stuff, it crosses over. I think it's not just like quote unquote genre fans that like it. It's usually more accessible for everyone. I think because it's less kind of throwing loads of blood and guts at you, and it's more about character and ambience and suspense and mood and all that kind of thing, which these two movies have like in spades as well, don't they? Which is amazing.
Yeah, and it's like the whole attitude towards the supernatural I feel like is always way more metaphorical
Yeah.
in these movies, and so it's relying less on the idea of, ooh, are ghosts real, are they not, and more the idea like, well, let's pretend ghosts are emotions or memories or like
Exactly.
feelings, and then you have less of a problem kind of getting around that, I don't know, logic
Yeah,
hurdle.
definitely. Yeah. Often you can kind of make up your own mind about them sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I usually say no, but I've always been fascinated with them. And even with the idea that if they're not real, why do we see them? And
Yeah.
I've even gone to like lectures about this.
Oh, have you?
And
Cool.
all the ideas about like if you're standing too close to an electromagnet like pulse, you will start to hallucinate things. Like, and then there's sleep paralysis. Loads of ghost stories come from that.
A lot of horror comes from sleep paralysis.
Yeah, so much of it. And so even if I don't strictly think, yes, they are real, I think I believe that people are seeing things.
Yes.
And I'm interested in that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have a favourite horror movie?
I have quite a boring answer, but I have always just loved The Shining so
Oh,
much.
yeah.
Like, that's just to me the most perfect thing, because the horror that it does, I feel like, is both very like baroque and very subtle at the same time. And the shot that always scares me, the scariest shot in any film ever to me is that shot where there's the open door and the guy dressed as the bear
This is
servicing the gentleman. And I just remember watching it for the first time when I was a teenager, and just, it's like my mind exploded. I was just like, what? Why is that there? And that, just the unknown factor of that shot was the most terrifying thing in the world to me.
Me too. We talked about this a few weeks ago on the podcast, because obviously it is kind of a haunted house movie in a sense, The Shining, and we talk about it at the moment as this series of kind of ghost movies, and that for me is the scariest shot in the film, if not one of the scariest shots in any film, I think. What is that bear guy doing? I mean,
just, like, it keeps me up at night sometimes.
It's the way that they look at us as well.
It's like they're annoyed that we've inconvenienced them.
I know.
So it plays into like social anxieties as well, because you're like, oh, so sorry, sorry, I'll just leave you doing your thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's that thing that these kind of ghost movies have as well. It's the kind of what Freud called the uncanny. It's that kind of, it's kind of like real life, but it's just a little bit off. It's just something is wrong that kind of gives you the chills, and that is, and I think that's what these two movies that we're going to talk about have a lot of as well. There's that kind of nothing necessarily big on screen is happening, especially with the Orphanage, but I constantly have this feeling of like, oh my god, like sheer dread or something, which is the best kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, it's like, I guess to spoil it slightly, but both these films have shots of children standing at the end of a hallway, and you're like, that shouldn't...
Nothing scarier.
That's just a child. And you're just standing there. But both of those shots are some of the two of the scariest shots in both films, and it's just interesting, because it's just playing off that feeling when you know that something isn't quite, when you like walk into a house and you know something's wrong, something's
off, you just have a feeling, because
I've had that before, and even though I say I don't believe in ghosts, I've had moments where you just walk into a room and you're like, something's wrong, and I don't know why, but there's something wrong at the moment.
Or you wake up in the middle of the night and there's a shadow or a curtain moving or something, and your logical part of your brain goes, okay, that is just the wind, or that's just the pile of clothes on the floor. But there's a split second when you're like, is that a person? Is there something going on? And everyone's had that kind of experience, and it's these are the kind of movies that tap into that, which is what's so brilliant. And also, the children thing, I think, before we get started on them both, look, it's interesting because they're both so to do with children and losing children, but also scary children. I mean, what is it? There's been a whole history of horror, including The Shining, about films about scary children, The Ring, everything. I mean, what is it about children that are scary to adults, do you think?
I mean, I'm the worst person to ask this because I'm just scared of children.
Exactly, but why do you think you are?
For me, it's because, they have no rules. They just do things. And you don't know what they're going to do at any moment in time.
Yes.
A child might just come up to you and punch you in the face.
Yes.
Because they haven't quite been taught the social norms to be like, don't walk up to people and punch them in the face. And I think that's a little scary.
Yeah, I think that's true. There's no kind of filter there, is there?
And they don't fear death, they don't fear anything. They will just like rampage at you. Like, this is very telling about me. But, I think there's like just that kind of something, there's something unexpected about the stuff that they do, and you can't quite figure out how their brain works, even though we were all children, and it's like, I know I used to be like that and I used to think like that, but now suddenly something has happened to me in my life that I no longer understand you. And I think that's kind of scary. Maybe it reminds you of your own mortality as well, in a way.
I think it could be that, definitely. And again, it's that weird uncanny thing, and it sounds so stupid to say, but it's like, well, it looks like us, but it's smaller, and what's it thinking? And it's amazing.
It's like a xenomorph.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you're kind of cute, but also
I love it. Just compare all children to xenomorphs. Brilliant.
I think I would get along better with the little tiny xenomorph from Alien
Oh no,
Covenant.
Not the face hugger thing. I can't deal with those.
The little tiny one from Alien Covenant.
Just like the one that runs around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the same as a child to me.
Oh God.
It's like, where are you going? What are
Yeah,
you doing?
where is it?
Calm
Where's it
down.
hiding? Yeah, exactly. That's why Chucky's scary as well. It's something about the smallness,
Oh, yeah.
the little feet running around and that kind of thing.
Oh, I love Chucky.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. So let's start off by talking about The Devil's Backbone then, from 2001.
¿Qué es un fantasma? Un evento terrible condenado a repetirse una y otra vez. Un instante de dolor, quizá. Algo muerto que parece por momentos vivo aún.
It's essentially about a little boy who comes to this orphanage just during the Spanish Civil War, and he arrives here. His father's been killed in part of the fighting, and so he comes to this orphanage, and there's just a few things not quite right about it. There's a bomb in the courtyard that somehow didn't explode, so it just sits there in the courtyard and it's ticking away. And they say that it's been diffused, but you're not quite sure.
No.
And there's also talk of a ghost. And the same night that the bomb dropped, a little boy called Santi disappeared. They say that he ran away, but there also is talk of this ghost. And so you're starting to think, oh, is this connected somehow?
Do you remember, like, the first time you watched this film and, you know, what your experience of it was? And also, what do you think of the film in general? Are you a fan?
I really like it. I guess it's maybe not my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie because I think it's interesting. I feel like he explored those exact same themes in other films, maybe
Yes.
a little bit better.
Yes.
Like The Devil's Backbone to me is the film that kind of sets up Pan's Labyrinth and then Crimson Peak.
Yeah.
Later on, which are both films that I'm just so in love with. And,
Right, okay, yeah.
I think Pan's Labyrinth was the first one that I watched.
I think exactly the same with me. I think Pan's Labyrinth was what opened me up to Del Toro. Apart from I've maybe seen the big, you know, Hellboys and Blades and stuff like that. But Pan's Labyrinth was when I really became aware of, oh, this man's amazing. And I think it's still, you know, it's my favourite film of his, and it's one of my favourite films of all time, I think, Pan's Labyrinth. And I think the same as you, I just, maybe because I saw Devil's Backbone after it, to me it's just, oh, this is the film that set up Pan's Labyrinth, basically, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to see it almost as its own thing because, I feel like, especially with Crimson Peak as well, there's so much in this film that I'm like, oh, he came back to that in Crimson Peak.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's Crimson Peak. That's
Yes.
Crimson Peak.
Now, Crimson Peak, I thought was terrible. It's the only film of his I saw that I genuinely dislike vehemently. But maybe I need to see it again. Am I wrong?
I love it because it is so gothic. It just, and I think that's maybe why it struggles so much, because I think to some degree we're not used to the gothic genre anymore, and I think I'm more used to it because like I really love reading all the ghost stories. Like Edith Wharton, her ghost stories are incredible, and so reading those and then you watch Crimson Peak, you go, oh well, that makes sense. It's kind of, they're very similar.
Yes, no, absolutely.
He's taking a lot of elements and like putting screen, but I think because we're so, and those stories are very kind of weird and out there and ridiculous to some degree, but they also have their own internal logic, which I think my brain is perfectly attuned to. So I was like, I absolutely loved it.
I think I had such high expectations for it because I love Del Toro, I love horror, I love ghosts, I love hauntings, I love that kind of gothic stuff. So I thought, brilliant, this is like literally ticks every box for me. And I was just a little bit disappointed. I think maybe for me, Del Toro's visual style is so brilliant and striking, and it works better for me for sort of that sort of fantasy, Pan's Labyrinth-y, Shape of Water even. Whereas when he, like, I don't know, I think I wanted the Crimson Peak and a little bit Devil's Backbone as well to be slightly more stripped back and have a bit less CGI and a bit less kind of colourful, wacky kind of visuals in it. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I just wanted to, maybe see less almost or something. I don't know.
I will agree that it's wacky, but I love the wacky.
Fair enough. So I mean, Devil's Backbone, you know, first of all, I think what's interesting about it, because everything we've talked about so far pretty much is stories where the ghosts themselves are the villain, if you like, are the things to fear. Whereas this film is a little bit different to that, isn't it? I would say. I mean, this ghost. How do you feel about the ghost of Santi in general?
Yeah, I think that's to me the whole really big thing with the Gothic genre. When you go back to a lot of the literary versions of it, is that ghosts in that world are there to send a message. They're there purely to tell you something.
Yes.
And there is, in fact, nothing harmful about them. And the problem that we have is that we're so afraid of them that we're not listening. And so a lot of the stories are about the heroes having to push through their fear and actually kind of stop and listen to what they're saying. And often they're trying to like save their life or trying to like uncover some horrible thing that someone else is doing. And so I think, Devil's Backbone is just absolutely so on point with that sort of genre aspect to it.
It is, definitely. And Del Toro, he's talked about so many times, and you can tell from watching his films, he has a love for the monster. Like, he loves the monsters, the ghosts, they're not scary things to him, they're like comfort.
Especially with The Shape of Water, where it's like
it's literally a love story with a monster.
Now the monster's like sexy and romantic.
Exactly.
I know, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because I feel like I don't feel like I hear him talk that much about the Gothic genre, so I wonder almost if it's something coincidental,
maybe
that they just happen to align. But then I also see it, I have this strange thing that I've noticed, and I always struggle to articulate it, is that there is a connection, I feel like, between all these horror films made by directors from sort of Spanish speaking countries. I don't know what the right word to kind of collect everyone together is, but there's this movie, there's The Orphanage, there's The Others by Alejandro Amenabar. There is Mama by Andy Muschietti, and I managed to interview him for it, and I was trying to ask him this question and be like, well, what is it? Like, what's going on? Because I even feel like it is sort of part of that same genre. I feel like it is quite gothic in a way. There's like little elements to it, and it was weird because he didn't quite have an answer for me. So it's still a mystery. He was kind of saying like, I guess, because a lot of these different countries will have similar cultural elements to them, and there is this emphasis on folklore, and it might come from there because I guess the supernatural is a little bit different. I think in folklore the supernatural isn't always villainous or scary. It's sometimes more of a messenger. But at the same time he was like, but also like we all grew up on Stephen King and Steven Spielberg, so it's not like it's like something massively different happened in our childhoods. It's just it's interesting, and I hope one day to like find the answer. I think it's something I'm still trying to figure out. And
it's that strange mix of, because obviously Del Toro is Mexican, and I think Mexico has a whole culture and folklore of that kind of. It's very much embraces the kind of, they have the Day of the Dead, and even when you look at kids, Coco and all these kind of stories where it's like they embrace that kind of almost gothic-y traditions, aren't they? But obviously Del Toro tells a lot of stories about Spain, and I think Spain is a country, I've seen people like Mark Gatiss talk about it on TV, it had the whole sort of Franco Spain that was a huge chunk of the 20th century, and I think that looms large on their art and their cinema still, that kind of palpable sort of sense of death and loss and grief and all that kind of thing, I suppose. And maybe that's somehow what kind of lingers in their art as well, that kind of like quiet, morose kind of death is kind of still looms large over their country or something. It's that weird thing.
And I guess like when death is something that is more like you're kind of surrounded by it, then it becomes less supernatural, it becomes less terrifying to you. And I guess that's why I think with the Day of the Dead, that sort of came out like at a period of time where they had higher death rates, that you just had to kind of embrace it in a way and just be like, well, this is a part of life. And so maybe that's part of it as well.
I think that's true. And also, like, I guess, the idea of ghosts, in some ways you can take some comfort in ghosts, in that your loved ones might still be there. And again, this is something definitely with The Orphanage that they sort of cover, really, isn't it? And, for Del Toro, it's the ghost in Devil's Backbone isn't this menacing thing, really. It's this kind of almost, comforting thing. And it's the people, it's the war, it's the people that are terrifying and evil and horrible. It's the same with Pan's Labyrinth, isn't it? Really, it's like that kind of fascist character is way scarier than the monsters in Pan's Labyrinth as well. So it's people that he's scared of, clearly.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. And it is interesting that Pan's Labyrinth and Devil's Backbone are both, looking at kind of the human terrors of war and trying to be like, oh, go towards, the supernatural as an escape, because that is fantasy, and maybe death
Embrace
is a little
the
less
monsters.
scary.
I think that's true.
Because I guess I think you really see that in Devil's Backbone when they talk about this inevitability of death. There's a line talking about like, I thought there would be an after this war, and I realize now there isn't. And that, to me, was one of the most poignant lines of the entire film, because you just have to, like, face this fate. I guess the ghost in Devil's Backbone is almost there to be a way to process that thought. And the bomb as well, just being there as this constant reminder of, like, oh, this sounds really grim, but, like, death is coming. And you just have to accept that it might be up any moment. And I guess... Del Toro is very good at finding kind of less harsh ways into that thinking.
Beautiful ways,
like Pan's Labyrinth is beautiful. It's this fairy tale and the princess, and I feel like Devil's Backbone it's still the ghost, but he's just like a little kid. He just wants to hang out.
He does. And actually, you're right. I think, that line as well. Yeah, you're so right about, I thought there'd be more after this. It's almost like they are all dead, It's almost like they're in this weird limbo place, with that bomb there. And they make constant references to they're miles and miles from anywhere. They're not near any towns, and these people are just stuck in the middle of nowhere with death looming over them. The massive bomb in the yard, and dead bodies in the water underneath them, and all the empty beds of the children, and it's like they are all dead already, almost, isn't it?
I guess it's kind of like the purgatory idea. That you're just waiting.
And it is interesting because, all these subjects sound so grim, and you're right, though. The film itself, I mean, it is really sad and melancholy, but also Del Toro turns these stories into something beautiful and exciting and quite luscious to look at and all that kind of thing. I mean, what do you think in terms of, like, the visuals, the cinematography and that kind of thing? What did you think of that in general? Does it fit Del Toro's kind of classic style?
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about Devil's Backbone to me as well is the colouring of everything, because we're so used to ghost stories. It's like The Orphanage. It's dark and it's blues and it's dark greens, and here it's so orange. Everything's like the orange, deserty, sunlight, bright.
It's so Spanish looking,
browns,
isn't it?
And it makes perfect sense for the context of the story that he's telling, and it makes it an interesting challenge to be like, how can this make it scary without having to rely on the traditional sort of horror colours? So I think that's what really struck out to me, and I think as well he has a way of filming things that I would say is not particularly horror influence. I think he just films it as a story, and compare it to The Orphanage. I guess it'd be easy to do that. In The Orphanage, the camera's always crawling everywhere. It's kind of like sneaking around, and I feel like
it's much more designed to scare you.
And the Devil's Backbone doesn't really do that so much, and the camera actually so often takes the perspective of the ghost. There's that great shot where the kid comes down to the basement and he's kind of creeping around, and then it cuts to the ghost hiding behind a pillar as if he's the one who's being scared. And I think that's brilliant. That's so unexpected for a horror film to actually take the perspective of like, hey, the ghost is just as scared of you as you are of it.
It's this scared little child. Definitely. And it really is that kind of is the first point when you feel this real sense of sadness almost for this ghost, this little boy. You just think, oh, this is actually just an innocent child that's died, and it's not some menacing, scary presence that we should be scared of, kind of thing. I mean, do you think the film in general is even supposed to scare you? Do you find any of the film scary?
Not particularly. I feel like it still is a horror film to some degree. There are certain scenes that are feel like traditional horror. There's like the hallway scene, classic horror thing. You're on one end of the hallway, the thing is on the other end, and it's coming towards you.
The keyhole as well. The
hides in a cupboard, and he's trying to open the door, and it's rattling, and that's absolute traditional, and that scene is quite scary, I would say. Like, not the scariest thing around, but it's like, yes, this is horror.
Yeah, definitely. I think it dabbles in all those like horror tropes, but then it kind of subverts them. I think that's the thing. It's like you say, most of it is set in kind of stark daylight, and you've got these orangey colours, and it's not like the kind of gothic lighting or anything like that. But then he kind of, every now and then when you go down to the basement, then it suddenly has those kind of tropes as well. He kind of throws everything in, and it works really well. But I mean, the character of Jacinto, the caretaker, who's kind of our villain, isn't he? I mean, he's a pretty frightening character as well.
Yeah, I guess he's very equivalent to the captain in Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, he is.
What I find really interesting about the villains in Del Toro movies is his character made me think a lot about Michael Shannon's character in The Shape of Water, because they're both men who, their evil comes out of this place of shame.
Yes.
They're just both
Pride.
absolute, they're monsters. They are monsters themselves, but they're monsters that are created out of, this horrible sense of shame. Like, Jacinto grew up in this orphanage, and he hated it there. He hated it so much, and he keeps saying that I just wanted to leave, and it is so shameful for me to be back here.
And he wants to see it burn.
He says what he wanted to get rich so he could buy it and burn it down. Just seems excessive.
And a little bit excessive.
You're like,
just leave, mate. Just go.
Seems quite nice here, actually.
That was quite nice.
Calm down.
And you're right. It is the classic kind of, it's the sort of pride, and it's also greed. You know, it's the fact that like he's obsessed with finding gold, and it's the gold that like weighs him down in the water at the end and is his demise kind of thing. It's that classic kind of evil villain who wants all the... It's almost like, again, and all his films have fairy tale-ness to them, and it's a kind of fairy tale villain as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they have that sense of like kind of almost ogre. I was thinking about this while watching it as well last night. The Devil's Backbone, there's that moment when he is injured and his eye suddenly becomes very, very bloodshot and is sort of almost bleeding. And for the rest of the film, he's got this slightly more monstrous look to him physically, because he's a very good-looking guy. But then they kind of make him look more monstrous as the film goes on. Yeah. And I was thinking it's the same with Michael Shannon, the way that he hurts his finger, doesn't he? His finger gets like infected and gross,
and then he sews it back on.
It's
the worst thing.
Yes, and then we've got Pan's Labyrinth, where the fascist captain, he rips his face open, his lip, and he has to sew it back on, and then it rips again. And all of his villains, they're humans, but they have these like monstrous traits, like these ailments. There's something wrong with them all. These things missing or chunks taken out of them, or you know, that kind of almost disfigures them slightly.
Although it's interesting because they always happen during the film, and I feel like a lot of traditional villains, they're kind of like from the start it'll be like the Bond villain with but here it always happens to, it's because of their evil actions they get, and then it's almost like the actual monsters of the movie who start out looking monstrous by traditional terms, like they it's interesting. Like, they look like that, but their actions are only good.
Other way around. So
you learn to see them. I guess, in The Shape of Water, especially, you learn to see that as kind of attractive to some degree.
Definitely.
And with like Santi, the little boy, and the ghost boy, over the film, you get over the fact that his head is like open and there's blood coming out. You start to get over it, and you see, actually, no, he's not monstrous. And so it's kind of opposite character journeys. In a way.
It is. It's great, and you slowly learn to love the monster. Yeah, it's really clever, and you can see it's so interesting to kind of pick apart all those elements in The Devil's Backbone. And I think, you know, it's one of those things I was watching and I was like, I bet, you know, if I could watch this again, I'd probably spot even more things about it. It's one of those movies that I think you could rewatch and appreciate more and more in a way, because I know there are a lot of people and critics who kind of say, no, this is his best movie, this is his most underrated, this is his masterpiece kind of thing. And I think Del Toro has gone on record and said that it's his favourite and his most personal of all of his movies as well, which is interesting. So it's obviously something very close to his heart. I think he spent something like 16 years thinking it up and developing it and writing it and everything. So yeah, it's obviously something like super personal to him.
Although now I feel bad for being like, actually I preferred Pan's Labyrinth.
It's not Pan's Labyrinth, but it's true. I think Pan's Labyrinth, I think on paper everything is better. Everything's like, the story is told in a much kind of neater way. The characters are better.
Yeah.
It looks better. I do think Pan's Labyrinth is better, personally.
Sorry, Guillermo.
Yeah, sorry. And I love horror so much, and I'm surprised this one isn't my favourite in a way, because Pan's Labyrinth is much more a fantasy kind of thing, but it's just so perfect. I couldn't find a single fault with Pan's Labyrinth. I think it was like a perfect movie. Anything else you want to mention on The Devil's Backbone? I mean, what did you think of, like, the characters in general? We've got some just wonderful, like, colourful characters. The sort of headmistress of the school who has one leg, and her husband, or her... Is it her husband, her partner? They sleep in separate rooms, but... No,
it's just the doctor who is
the doctor
in love with her. Yeah, because it's great as well that you have the romance element.
Yeah, again, very gothic.
Well.
Yeah,
so you have the woman whose husband died, but the doctor's so in love with her, but
Yeah.
she's sleeping with Jacinto. And there's the whole thing where, I don't know if I can say a slightly rude word, but
you can
he's
swear
like,
as much as you want.
okay, Jacinto, they're sleeping together, and he's like, yes, they gave you the poetry, but you needed the hard cock, and that's what I'm giving you. And then it's very interesting that as she's dying, the doctor is like speaking this beautiful poetry to her, and that's the most fulfilling thing. And it was like, actually, she didn't need the hard cock, she needed the poetry.
Yeah, she needed the poetry. Exactly.
Which sounds like a very simplistic way to say it, but it is kind of a nice storyline, I think.
Yeah, it is, totally. And it's poetic, isn't it? I mean, it starts with, I think, and we discover at the end almost, don't we, that it's the doctor who's kind of narrating the film. What is a ghost? Is it a tragedy repeating itself over and over again? Is it pain that sustains? And, it's all that. And I suppose that's, pretty on the nose, but it's kind of saying that it's all these things in this movie, isn't it? A ghost represents kind of everything that you're about to see.
That the war is the ghost, the bomb is a ghost.
Yeah.
Like it's all. Yeah, that's why I really like the bomb, is because the bomb is a ghost in a way, because it's a memory of the pain of war.
Yeah.
And it could erupt at any moment. And that's kind of how we conceive of ghosts, is that they're this horrible memory and they're just going to pop out at you any moment.
Yeah, it's just lingering there.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, and it's no coincidence that the bomb lands on the same night that Santi just happens to die as well, isn't it? So it's like, okay, they're very much linked. Metaphor, exactly. It's weird, isn't it? Because it, in some ways, feels so on the nose, but it doesn't when you watch it. It's really kind of subtly, beautifully told and unravels. Yeah,
because I guess it is a folk story, it's a fairy tale, and they are always so on the nose, but that's why they work, because they prey on very like specific emotions and thought processes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Actually, it reminded me as well of did you see from a few years back Under the Shadow, the Iranian ghost movie, which is just fantastic,
really
as well,
scary,
which we're covering soon on this podcast. Yeah, really scary. But obviously that has got the big bomb that drops through the roof of the flat and just kind of stays there and lingers on this building that is full of death and ghosts and everything. And I'm sure that must have been partly influenced by Devil's Backbone. You can see the link there very clearly.
Yeah, I guess it's very much the same theme of like that any moment death is coming.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what do you think of the title itself, The Devil's Backbone, and what that means? Because they refer to it briefly, don't they, as the kind of spinal condition that those fetuses have in those jars. And there's that sort of brief conversation, and that's the only mention really of what the Devil's Backbone is.
It is kind of weird because it's basically a fetus where the spine is exposed.
Yes.
And the doctor says of it, it's like children who were never meant to be born, they weren't meant to exist, which is interesting. Like I kind of am still trying to figure out what exactly he means by it, because surely the child, even if Santi died, he was still meant to exist. But I don't know whether it's connected to the idea of monsters, like
monsters, or the fact that they're like kind of dead but are still there, like preserved in a jar or something. And then also it also sparks that conversation, doesn't it, of like, and people believe that if you drink this it will do this, this and this, and do you choose to believe in it or not, kind of a thing.
The fetus, the delicious fetus rum,
fetus juice.
And it's very weird that he takes a sip at the end of that scene.
Yes, that's true. It's weird, isn't it? I mean, it's great. It's a great kind of line where he sort of says, okay, so are you going to believe in this as well as ghosts, sort of thing? And the kid's like, oh yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good, thanks.
But then does the fact that he drinks it mean that he does believe in ghosts?
It's kind of
considering he is soon about to become one.
I
mean, because there's a lot of premonitions here as well, because I guess it's going back to the Gothic thing that Santi, the reason that he's there almost to a degree is to try and warn these children about 3/4 of the way through the film. Jacinto tries to actually like blow up the orphanage because he's just so mad at everyone and he wants that gold. And so quite a few children die in that explosion. It's a very, very like upsetting scene, but it makes you suddenly realize like the whole point of why Santi was there is that he keeps trying to be like, you're going to die, like people are going to die, and I guess he doesn't quite know how to express it, and there's also nothing that they could really do to stop it. So it's interesting that he's there just to tell them this message. But
that's it. It's that inevitable death looming over them, isn't it? It's horrible. And you know, even at the very end where we kind of get a sort of happy ending where the kids get out, but you just think, well, where are they going to go now? You know, you see them all leave together, all these children, and you're just like, we know from having been told it millions of times, they're miles and miles from anything. They're nowhere near the nearest town. Even if they do go to the nearest town, it's full of Franco-fascists. And, you know, it's just like they're doomed, aren't they, basically?
Yeah, it's like the one moment we leave the orphanage and go to the town, you get to see a bunch of people get lined up and shot. So you're like, oh, nowhere is safe.
Exactly. Which was a very Pan's Labyrinth-y moment as well, that bit, wasn't it? And it's funny because he calls it, obviously, I think he sort of says Pan's Labyrinth is the sister film to Devil's Backbone. This is kind of the brother film. And there is that kind of, there's kind of stuff about masculinity in there, I think, as well, isn't there? You know, like, you know, to use like really obvious kind of gender cliches, but while like Pan's Labyrinth is very kind of subtle and elegant in the way it's made, Devil's Backbone has got a lot of like, let's talk about cocks, let's draw vaginas on this, you know, it's all about, you know, who's impotent and who isn't, and these boys who are really into just like their comics and fight each other and bully each other, and they've got flick knives, and it's like all round a kind of more sort of stereotypically masculine film was in some way, isn't it?
Although that is one thing I really like about it as well, is that he takes the time to build realistic relationships between the boys instead of just trying to move through it so we can get to the horror, which I think a lot of less good horror films do. They, you know, they always rush through the character moments, but because you spend so much time with these boys and you understand the dynamics between them, when they do have those moments interrupted by something that Santi's doing, it's so much more terrifying because you're so invested in their lives and their feelings and their emotions. And
totally. And it's all these children that you have your initial opinion of, you know, oh, that kid's the horrible bully, and he turns out really not to be, and he's actually got this really horrible, sad experience where he saw this other kid die, and that's why he is the way he is. And again, it's the same with the ghost child Santi. It's like he's terrifying, scary ghost. Oh no, he isn't. And it's actually all the children are just these poor victims of circumstances and innocent, basically. And it's awful adults like us that cause all the problems, basically.
Oh, boo.
Boo adults. That's the thing. I think Del Toro is clearly just like, he's a child inside still, isn't he? That's the thing.
It's the best way to be.
Okay, should we move on to the orphanage then?
Yes.
There are children who can see a hidden world, whose imagination opens their eyes. Disappearance. A dark place. And the games children play when they're alone in the dark. The Orphanage.
Okay, so I went to watch it as part of this double bill that it was going to be The Orphanage and then Julia's Eyes, which they both have the same
Julia's
star.
Eyes.
It's Belen Reda, so
Yes.
she's the star of both of these movies. And I was so excited. It was at a picture house in Edinburgh, and it was on in the morning, and I had a membership, so it was like membership morning. So I was like, great, 10 a.m., let's go see this horror movie. I'm sure it'll be fine. And there was pretty much no one there. It was me and maybe like 3 other people. And the film, I don't know, it was something about being kind of isolated in this huge, like, old, quite airy cinema. And seeing this film, I was so scared that I started crying, which doesn't happen that often when I'm watching horror movies. I'm usually kind of okay with stuff. I jump and then I go, okay, it's fine. And I was just crying, and I ran out at the end, and I never saw Julia's Eyes.
Wow.
I watched it like a month later, but I could not go back. I was like, I can't do this. This is... I thought I was going to die, which is really illogical.
No, I get it. I have a really similar experience. I was in Bath for some reason. I think I was visiting friends, and we went to this. It was like their kind of arty indie cinema, like an independent one that you kind of is like a door in an alleyway almost. And we went into this really lovely kind of old vintage cinema to watch this film called The Orphanage. And again, I hadn't really heard much about it. It was like just this new foreign language horror film out. And I went and saw it with my girlfriend at the time, and she was not just scared but upset by it. Like, I can't sit through this is like the palpable kind of fear and dread, but we made it to the end, and it was like, it's an absolute masterpiece, because you go through this wave of emotions of like terrified to devastated to moved to, like it's an exhausting experience. You feel pretty wrung out by the end.
I think The Orphanage for me has one of the most perfect endings in all of horror. I can't really think of anything that tops it.
No,
I mean, maybe The Shining, but even then, I think the way it comes together is that almost, I feel like with The Orphanage, the rest of the film is like, good. It's a good horror movie, but then you get to that final mark, and it's like,
oh my god,
it's like being punched in the face. Of just like, wow, okay, this is a lot to process. And all the horror really comes at that moment, even. Yeah, and
actually, it's what makes it even scarier to watch second time round, when you know what's really happening. Yeah. It's almost unbearable to watch in an entirely different way. It's like absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah, it's an incredible film. So let's just start. Could you give us a little plot rundown of The Orphanage?
Yeah, so it's about Laura. So I have to, because everyone has the Spanish name. So Laura, but Laura.
Yes.
She grew up in this orphanage, and the film actually opens on seeing them all as children playing this. Grandmother's Footsteps is the English equivalent, and I don't know what they're saying. It's like unos, dos, tres. And so they're playing this game, and then you sort of flash forward to her as an adult, and she's bought the building because she has such fond memories of it, and she remembers all her friends. All these kids were her friends, but she got adopted and sort of left. So she's coming back, and she wants to essentially do the same thing. She wants to open it up as an orphanage, or like not an orphanage, but I guess like a care facility for
kind of special needs children.
Special needs children. But it's like to have 5 or 6 that she can just really focus and take care of. But as she arrives there, her son, called Simon, starts talking about this little boy that he meets in the cave off at the beach.
Thomas.
Terrifying. And he just keeps talking about this little kid. And so then Simon disappears, and it's after this very traumatic event in which Thomas turns up, or maybe it's Simon.
Yes.
And he locks his mother in the bathroom, runs off, disappears. She thinks maybe he was drowned in the cave. The police seem to think no. And then after that, she starts experiencing some paranormal activity.
Yeah.
And is it Thomas? Is it Simon? Is Simon dead? We don't know. Yeah. And it's kind of...
Or is it all in her head? Or
unveiling the mystery, I guess, of what's going on.
It's just wonderful. I mean, this is, compared to Devil's Backbone, much more, like we said, sort of proper horror played for scares, isn't it? But it has got more to it than that. But it's really terrifying, as well as being just a perfect movie, I think. I don't think I would change a single element of this story, of this film. I just think it's like pretty much perfect from start to finish,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what about you? Do you think, now that you're over the trauma of first watching it, what are your thoughts on it?
I also absolutely might be one of my favorite horror movies of all time, just because of that ending. I think it's a brilliant. I mean, I guess we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So essentially, you go through this whole thing, and it's kind of, to a point, a traditional ghost movie. To some degree, she has all these experiences.
Yeah, you've got the medium coming in. You've got the seance.
And you go, okay, it's like a ghost movie. But then what she discovers is, again, it's the gothic thing of it's these children were trying to tell her what happened to her son. And what happened to her son is that he went down to the basement, because before then he keeps telling his mother, I want you to show Tomas's little room, like,
she just keeps
come see it. Yeah, but also she like gets aggressive and she slaps him, and it's this moment of, which I guess I'm not a parent, but I feel like parents must have always this thing of like, oh, there'll be that one moment where you just go too far and you kind of maybe hit your kid once and you just feel this tremendous amount of shame. But it's after that moment that he disappears.
That's the last interaction she ever has with him. It's just,
exactly. And so what happened is that he went to the basement because that was Tomas's place. And while she's running around trying to look for him, she opens the cupboard to it, but all these poles fall out. And so she's putting them back. But she's putting them in front of the door to the basement, and he's locked in, and he dies.
It's just...
And so he's been in the house the entire time, and it's that horrible feeling of like, it was nothing ghost related the entire time. It was her. She killed her own son.
It's just the most heart-wrenching thing to watch, especially second time around, when you see all those moments when she shuts him in, when she ignores him, when he says, I want to show you Thomas's house, and then everything that happens subsequently, which when you first watch it you think, okay, classic haunted house, she wakes up and she hears banging in the night, and then you think, oh my fucking hell, it was her son banging on the walls, potentially trying to get out or trying to reach his mum.
So I think, the flashback is the moment, because he dies because he falls off the staircase, and you hear that sound in the movie earlier, and she thinks it's the ghost, and it's just...
Oh my God, it's just heart-wrenching. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. But yeah, I mean, let's talk. I mean, what we're sort of led to believe is the ghost throughout most of the movie. Again, similar to The Devil's Backbone, the character that we're supposed to kind of fear is this Tomas, is this little boy that wears this kind of sack over his head. I mean, I think one of the scariest looking ghost children in any film ever. I would say a lot scarier than Santi. I would say is this sack wearing kid.
Yeah, because you're just like, why that sack?
Oh God.
I get that, because I guess in the film, he has some disfiguration in the face, so that's why he feels very shamed. But then you're like, oh, but why that sack with the creepy sewn on eyes? And it's like, you didn't make that sack just to be cute. No. You could have made a cute sack face. Yeah, but
oh God, it's so horrible. And it's he's got the kind of bad, he's breathing as well. He has kind of oh God,
it sounds like a pug.
Poor little pug, exactly. And again, you kind of think, oh, it's actually really sad. But when you first watch it, you're like, oh my fucking God, keep away from me. This thing going, coming towards her down the corridor. It's just absolutely terrifying. Yeah. And then, of course, there's that brilliant character of the social worker who turns out to be Thomas's mother, doesn't she? Who... That's the first bit I remember in the movie really terrifying me, is when she's hiding in the little outhouse looking for something. And again, the scare scenes are so well executed, where it's not really like a big jump out on you moment, because she kind of walks into this dark room, Laura, and then we just sort of see this woman just hiding in the background, and then scuttles out.
It's like this little old lady just there.
Oh my God. And that's it. Everything is kind of traditional, but also done with so much originality. I think it catches you off guard. I think some of these scare scenes.
Yeah,
it's like Thomas as well. That moment when you see him and he stood at the end of the corridor, as we mentioned, it's classic. But it's not a big jump scare. He kind of slowly walks towards her, and everything happens very kind of methodically.
Yeah, and it's the terror of that scene is you trying to figure out, is this Thomas or is this Simon?
Yes,
because I guess it's meant to, in reality, Simon is my understanding.
Yeah, I think it must be, mustn't it?
It was him.
He's angry with her and he's acting up.
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, who knows where he got that sack costume?
Well, I think was he supposed to have found it in Thomas's house in the cellar, because he'd been down there and he's like, I want to show you the house.
I would have thought he was... Okay, I'm now trying to pull it apart, but I would have thought he was wearing it when he was in the cave, because Thomas drowned in the cave. Maybe he had two.
Maybe
like
he had another because
backup sack face.
Because isn't he wearing it at the end when she finds him dead at the bottom of the stairs? So I'm guessing he must have found it somewhere, or maybe he found it in the
Ghost
cave.
Thomas gave it to him.
Yeah.
Being
Well,
like...
that's the other thing. Like, do you think that there are ghosts in this film? Because I wonder whether you could almost read the whole film as there are no ghosts. You know, that it's psychological, and the little boy had imaginary friends, and the mother was grieving and processing it in her own way, kind of thing, and those noises were actually Simone and whatever else happening in that house, you know.
I mean that is very true. That it's kind of like that's what I always liked about The Shining, is that that again you're like, okay, but are there ghosts in this, or is this
just a crazy alcoholic father losing his mind?
Which is because that gets to the reality of the whole situation. Is that a lot of these stories, it is people who have been grieving and they see like relatives and they have that scene where they're in the counseling group, and there's the mother being like, I saw my, I think it's daughter, like it was 2-3 months after she died, she was there just to tell me that she was fine, she was happy. And I guess that's kind of the little clue to be like, oh, okay, maybe this is what's happening here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's basically a film about dealing with grief and loss, isn't it? That is about letting go, really. That's like all it is.
Yeah.
It's really kind of sad. Because there's that moment at the end when she finally was worked out what's happened, and she goes up to the bedroom and she makes all the beds up and she takes pills to kill herself, basically. But it's only once she takes them all that suddenly all these ghost children appear around her, and it's like, oh, okay, again, there may not be any ghosts, it's just that she's now dying, or she's hallucinating, or whatever. And then it kind of repeats itself again, because then you just think of the poor husband who's lost his child and his wife at the end, and there's that moment where he's kind of visiting the graves, and then that sort of roundabout just drifts slightly, and he kind of looks like hopeful, as if like, oh, she's still with me, kind of a thing, isn't it? So it's just like sad story about people just not wanting to let go of their loved ones, basically. Yeah,
and I guess I feel like there's a little bit of guilt as well in this film, because
definitely guilt, shame.
And like the idea of her coming back to the orphanage I always find really interesting, because she wants to replicate, because I feel like she must feel some level of guilt because she got adopted and the other children did not, and we find out later that they died, which she didn't know about. Very unfortunate. But she just remembers these kids that, she was the lucky one. Why was I the lucky one? Why did these kids have to stay here? And so her coming back to essentially reopen this place to help other kids is interesting, because it feels like it does. I mean, she's a very generous, kind person, but there is also that little feeling of guilt that must come out of her.
Yes, definitely.
And then that comes back at the end when, she, in her dying moments, she's like, I'm going to take care of my friends that I abandoned.
I'm going to be there forever with them now. Yeah. It's funny. It kind of works in the kind of polar opposite side of the coin to the character of Vincenzo, who is, again, grew up in that orphanage and is stuck there, but is very kind of resentful about it in the kind of opposite manner. Wants to burn it down because he's still there. Yeah,
he should take some tips from her.
Yeah, who just wants to be there forever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you said when you watched it, it terrified you. What was it about? Was there any particular scene that was unbearable to you? Was it just everything? Was it the whole film in general? Was there any standout moments for you?
It was that scene with the grandmother's footstep. The unos, dos, tres.
Absolutely, like perfectly executed horror scene.
1, 2, 3, toca la pared. 1, 2, 3, toca la pared.
Because it's basically one shot of just the camera's on her. She turns around, the camera swings over. There's like one more kid. Turns back, she's counting, turns back. There's like 2 more kids.
1, 2, 3, toca la pared.
And just the way that whole scene is done, it's just
amazing.
Ingenious.
It's just amazing because it's like it just brings together everything as well. The kind of childlike. It's a child's game, basically. That is the whole. That's all it is. It's just she's playing a game that children play, and yet it turns into this horror. And that's kind of what the whole film is. It's like a child's game. It's like a treasure trail, isn't it? It's a treasure hunt that they've set up for her, kind of.
Yeah, because there's absolutely actually nothing malicious about these children.
No.
And they're just trying to be kids.
Yeah.
But because they're dead,
Yeah.
it becomes a problem.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And we're seeing it through our kind of scarred, cynical adult eyes, where we just think this must be something really horrible and sinister and unnatural. Yeah.
And you're so used to in the horror genre that the kids are malicious, you know, with the Exorcist, it's not really her fault, but still.
No, or, Ring, or those types of movies where it's like the ghost child is coming to get you.
Yeah, and so it's almost playing on those traditions to actually go, well, no, they're just kids. Like, if you're a kid and you die, it's like,
it's really sad.
Do your thing in the afterlife. Yeah. And there's something wrong with us that we would assume that to see a child in the afterlife, there would be something wrong. There's
something somehow scary.
Yeah, it's almost
about
to say that, like, oh, they somehow deserved it or something because they were evil. We destroyed them. Then, yeah, it's interesting. I guess it's questioning why we make those assumptions.
Why we're scared of it. I mean, I guess it's one of the scariest things to happen to anybody is losing a child. And actually just any time a child dying is so much more tragic and sad and terrifying to us than an adult dying, and maybe that is all linked into it somehow psychologically. Just the idea of dead children is just so much scarier to us.
Yeah, because it's like the worst thing imaginable, and so you imagine there must be great evil surrounding it, and somehow we've managed to project that on the child. Yeah,
these horror films are kind of ways of not their fault at all. These horror films are ways of kind of dealing with that absolute, probably biggest fear that any human being has, really, is what she goes through in this movie. It's horrible.
I know, this has been such a fun chat.
I know, I'm really sorry. Yeah, you've come for like the two most like devastating.
I just feel bad because I was the one who was suggesting, like, oh, let's do the Orphanage, the dead child movie.
The dead children movies, the two of them, aren't they? The dead children. But God, they're just so good. Like, these movies are so good. Any other things you want to cover on the Orphanage?
I don't know. Do we want to talk about that ambulance scene?
Oh yeah, we got that.
That is crazy.
The ambulance scene is the most kind of out and out horror moment in a way. Isn't it? It's the most kind of shrill, overwrought moment.
And I always struggle with that scene because I always go back and forth, because sometimes I go, oh, why is it in there? Because it's just a stupid horror moment of they see the old woman and then she gets hit by an ambulance and it's all gross and her jaw's hanging off. But then at the same time, then I go, oh, but it's good for, it actually adds so much to the story because it's, plot wise, it's how they figure out who this woman was. They figure out that she was Tomas's mother, but also there's that horrible, sad moment when she realizes that she thought this woman had her son. Yes. And now it's gone. Yes. Like, that little, tiny little moment of hope is just gone.
Exactly.
So,
It's that's it, isn't it, as well? It's like she clings on to every possible excuse, reason or explanation for what's happened, and each one gets kind of poo-pooed as we go along in the story.
No, it's just you all along.
Yeah, and in the most horrific way imaginable with that social worker. Yeah, I mean, the one thing scarier than children in movies is really, really scary old people. That's pretty scary too.
We are very, very cruel when we make horror.
So cruel.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, I always think of this as a Del Toro movie. Of course it isn't. He produced it, and I think he was the one that initially saw it and really championed it, and it was all very much all over the posters. Guillermo del Toro presents.
It made you think that he directed it, because I remember the poster and it's just Guillermo del Toro in giant letters, and then
just
J.A. Bayona.
Poor J.A. Bayona. And actually, he hasn't made anything that's matched up to this movie since, actually.
No, and a part of me just so wants this new Jurassic World movie to be like The Orphanage, but dinosaurs. Yeah. Like, they're doing the Unos Dos Tres, and it's like little velociraptor.
A velociraptor, yeah, brilliant. I mean, that would be terrifying.
Which, I hope that's why they hired him. I hope it's because of The Orphanage, and they're like, we want to make a really scary, because I feel like that's the one thing missing from Jurassic Park. Yes. Would be to have a horror, terrifying, because there's like scary elements to it.
In Spielberg's original, there was proper horror, I would say, but since then it hasn't had it. And you're right. Why else would they have? And actually, I think that's gone into a lot of the marketing. You can see Bryce Dallas Howard and people going, oh, this is scary. You know, this is the scariest Jurassic World film so far.
I want that to be like a new anxiety of mine, is that dinosaurs will come back.
Yeah, exactly. I really hope so.
Not something I'm worried about.
I'm hoping it's just a bad trailer, but I'm not excited by the trailer for it at all.
I forgot there was a trailer. I think I blanked it out because I didn't like it.
It wasn't good. Yeah, it wasn't good. But, maybe that's better, to go in with low expectations and see what happens.
They're hiding their grandmother's footsteps.
Exactly. Yeah.
To surprise you.
Exactly. But it does have, like, Guillermo del Toro's thumbprint all over it, this film, in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not just the themes. Everything we've talked about there matches so perfectly with The Devil's Backbone, but also the look of it, the kind of... everything, to the title sequence, to the general kind of cinematography of it, feels very... it's like a fairy tale, it's like a fantasy, you know. Yeah,
and it is interesting because he's had such a hand in this kind of Spanish language speaking gothic horror thing, because it was like Mama as well, like he was kind of championing that. And I think Julia's Eyes even.
Yes, definitely.
He's all over the posters for that, being like,
it's
guys,
Spanish. You're going to love it.
Yeah, he's like the ambassador for Spanish language horror. Which maybe, I don't know, because maybe I'm overthinking this whole thing and it's just been that Guillermo del Toro is so popular that now everybody's trying to like make these movies.
I think it's always a good indication, though, if he is liking it and championing it. And maybe it's just his own self-centered nature that he likes the films that look like his films. Yeah. But, I just think usually it's a good sign, especially with The Orphanage. In fact, if anything, I think in terms of horror movies, The Orphanage is better than anything he's directed, apart from Pan's Labyrinth, which for me is perfect, but it isn't really a horror film. But as a gothic horror ghost story, I think the Orphanage is, I think it's as good as it gets, really. I just think it's incredible.
I think The Others is maybe slightly...
Yeah, The Others as well.
It's The Orphanage and The Others are the top tier horror movies for me.
I agree. And actually The Others has a similar ending where it's like, oh my God, like everything comes together just perfectly at the end as well.
Yeah, because it was also her fault.
Yeah, also.
This is all about mothers.
Awful mothers.
Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is like so much guilt, isn't it? So much of ghosts are guilt. They're like feelings that linger and weigh on you. And again, it has that feeling, The Orphanage, of like death as well is coming. You know, at the very beginning, Simone keeps saying, it's because I'm gonna die. And we know that he's HIV positive and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's that whole element too where he just keeps saying, I'm gonna die. Thomas says, I'm gonna die. I'm not gonna be an adult. I'm Peter Pan and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Peter Pan stuff is really upsetting.
Really upsetting. And again, when you watch it again, you're just like, oh, he's gonna die.
But then it's because we all think he's gonna die because of the illness, but it's
because of his mum. It's really.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cry if we carry on talking about it. So let's wrap things up. But another big thumbs up for The Orphanage.
Yeah, I think The Orphanage is superior to Devil's Backbone.
Me too.
Even though I love Guillermo del Toro with all my heart.
And even though the latter traumatized you so much that you got upset by it.
Yeah. Oh, and I didn't tell the other part of the story where I got home and there was this cupboard in my flat that we didn't have a key to. And we just had no idea what was in there. And it's the first thing that you saw when you opened the door. And I remember coming back from the orphanage and opening the door and just seeing it. And I was like, there's a dead kid in there, isn't there?
Definitely, undoubtedly. Yeah. Oh my God, terrifying. Clarisse, thank you so much for joining me. This is very, very, very exciting. Where can people find you if they want to find like your stuff online, or follow you on social media or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I think you can just put in Clarisse Loughrey and it'll come up.
Perfect.
And on YouTube, it's That Darn Movie Show.
Love it. Excellent. And when you're, the hugely successful kind of next Mark Kermode, I'm going to show off about the fact that I had you on my podcast in the early days. Aww. Very, very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. And a huge thank you once again to my guest, the brilliant Clarisse Loughrey. What a treat it was having her on the podcast. And Clarisse, please come back again very soon. So what did you think of this week's show? What do you think of The Devil's Backbone and The Orphanage? Do you love these two movies as much as Clarisse and I do? I mean, to me, as I mentioned, The Orphanage is pretty much a perfect movie from start to finish. But let me know your thoughts. Drop us an email. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. evolutionpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter @evolutionpod or on Facebook. That's facebook.com/evolutionofhorror. As we near the end of the series, eventually I am going to start collating lists of listeners' top 10 ghost movies so we can run a little countdown at the end. So please do, if you can, start getting in touch with me. Start dropping me your top 10 ghost movie lists. Be really keen to start getting them in and collating them in preparation for the series finale. But we've still got a few modern classics to cover that have been released this last 10 years. And the next one we're going to be doing next week. Well, next week is going to be not only a sort of movie review, but also, I suppose, a kind of franchise review, which is quite good fun. We haven't really had the chance to do a whole franchise review since the slasher days. But this is, in some ways, I'd say one of the biggest horror franchises of the 21st century. You could probably put it alongside some of the great horror franchises out there, like the Nightmare on Elm Street films or the Halloween films. But these movies were a lot cheaper. They were a lot smaller. This was a very tiny micro-budget 2007 movie about two people who set up a night vision camera in their bedroom to catch ghosts while they slept at night. I am, of course, talking about the wonderful Paranormal Activity. I'm going to be discussing the original one in spoilerific detail from beginning to end, and then we're going to be discussing all the sequels, those very, very confusing sequels, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, I think, in spoiler-free detail. So we'll also be running through all of those briefly. And joining me to discuss all of these classics is another critic from The Independent, one of Clarisse's colleagues. He's been on the podcast before discussing his favourite slasher movie, Halloween, and now he's back to discuss his favourite ghost movie, Paranormal Activity. I am, of course, talking about the brilliant Jacob Stolworthy. So join us then for all of this and more on the evolution of horror.